Welcome to the BlockCrunch Podcast, the show for crypto natives. Every week, we do short but in-depth conversations with the most important builders and investors in crypto, so you can filter through what's noise and stay ahead of the markets. I'm your host, Jason Choi. Nothing on this show should be construed as financial advice, and my guests, myself, and my employer may hold positions in assets discussed on the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Crypto.com and Bittrex Global. Our sponsor, Crypto.com, is giving away 4 Teslas. If you're interested, stick around to learn more. Now, recently, NFTs have taken the crypto world by storm. And not just the crypto world, because we have internet celebrities like Logan Paul, Gary Vaynerchuk, and billionaire investors like Mark Cuban and Chamath Palihapitiya, all of whom are known for their work strictly outside of crypto, now talking about investing in and even selling their own non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, another term for digital collectibles. Now, to put it in numbers for you, NBA Top Shot, which is a series of digitized highlights from notable NBA basketball players that users can buy and own, recently surpassed the height of the NFT bubble in 2018, trading over $30 million in value just today, with many of these users coming from outside of crypto. Now, the crypto art market, which is another subsector of the NFT market, and these are digitized pieces of art with a trustless layer of ownership, also just eclipsed $125 million in size. And in the past 30 days, we have $8 million worth of crypto art that's traded on one of the venues called Super Rare. Now, while this is incredibly impressive and exciting compared to DeFi, which has exceeded $40 billion in deposits across multiple protocols, crypto art and digital collectibles are still a relatively small market. And while I'm really excited by the opportunity to collect things like art and digital pets on the internet, I've always been skeptical about NFTs as a long-term investment, particularly when it comes to things like digital collectible art. Now, part of an investor's job is to be open-minded, so I'm very grateful for Nick Tomaino, one of the most active investors in NFTs and the founder of One Confirmation, a crypto-focused VC firm, as well as an early employee at Coinbase, to come on the show to talk to me about why he sees a similar opportunity as he did when he joined Coinbase in the early days with NFTs, and to discuss and debate with me some of the concerns or hesitations that I have about investing in NFTs today. Now, I'll play the role of the skeptic, and Nick will try to convince me of the case for NFTs, and I'm really keen to see what you think after listening to this discussion/debate as well. So tweet at me at Mr. Jason Choi and let me know what your thoughts are on investing in NFTs. And if you're curious about this topic, this is definitely not the last episode that we'll do on NFTs, just because I'm personally very keen to explore more as well. So we'll invite more experts on the show, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to learn more. All right, Nick, welcome back to the show. Super glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been on the show before, actually, when we first started, probably back in 2018, late 2018-ish. So I won't make you walk through your whole resume again. And I think people know you primarily as ex-Coinbase and the founder of One Confirmation, one of the first venture capital firms in crypto as well. But for those unfamiliar with your interest in NFTs, can you maybe share some color on how you discovered NFTs and what is your involvement in NFTs right now?
Sure. I think, like a lot of people in crypto, I'm a collector and I like to collect scarce assets. And I think at the end of the day, NFTs are very similar to Bitcoin in that, it's a scarce asset that has a story attached to it. And so I've kind of just been tracking scarce assets that have stories attached to them since I got into the space in 2012, and yeah, it's been interesting to see the explosion in the past month or so. But it's, I think, the result of a lot of people grinding for a long time, and it's really catching on at a mainstream level. So I think it's fun. I mean, that's the main thing that I'm excited about. I think what I've been saying is, I think, like, DeFi is crypto for elites, and NFTs is crypto for normies. So it's just a fun, more relatable thing that is happening in crypto right now that more mainstream normal people are excited about. So I'm excited.
That's a really interesting way to put it. And I gotta be honest, I have been skeptical of a lot of the digital collectibles for a long time, obviously to my own detriment, given how well a lot of them have done from an investment perspective. But before we kind of get into it, and for me to get educated, let's get the definitions right, right? So when people hear about NFTs or non-fungible tokens, they immediately think of digital collectibles, things like digital art or maybe even crypto kitties and so on. Is that a fair way to think about what NFTs are, or is it much broader than that?
I think it's a fair way. I mean, I think it's just digital collectibles is a term I like to use because it's relatable to people, right? There's a lot of people outside of crypto that just like collecting things, right? Whether it's art or sports cards or comic books or sneakers. There's I don't know the total numbers in the world of people that just like to collect things, but it's large. And yeah, I mean, I think at a high level, an NFT is just a digital uh, collectible thing that you can collect. And there's a whole variety of different NFTs or digital collectibles. I think there's been a lot of excitement and interest in kind of gaming assets. And I think you could think of crypto kitties as kind of the first Ethereum based NFT project to get attention. And that was more of a gaming asset. But I'm particularly excited right now about crypto art as a kind of category within NFTs. But there's a lot of different categories, I guess, but within the broader NFT segment.
Yeah, and speaking of that, speaking of crypto art, I'm really curious about your mental model for mapping out the entire space. So maybe I can walk you through my model first, and you can tell me if I'm thinking about this wrong. But the
Well,
way I think
I'd
about
love,
it,
Jason. I'd love to hear why you're skeptical. I think that could be a good, place to start. Why hasn't it really clicked for you?
yeah, I did wanted to get into that. Perhaps we can save that for later. But just to kind of give listeners a taste, is I, I've never been a collector of a lot of the things like Pokemon cards. I'm curious about Pokemon like any Asian kid, but I haven't gotten around to understanding why one card can sell for like $200,000. And when I see things in the digital collector space that seems to be selling for dozens of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and they seem to be created with little to no effort at all, it brings to my mind kind of this image of a bubble, and I almost kind of draw parallels to the 2017 CryptoKitties bubble where we saw a massive boom in speculative demand for the CryptoKitties, and then a sudden implosion in demand, and then basically just a very kind of muted level of adoption throughout the kind of remaining subsequent 2 years. So to me, I just can't kind of figure out where is the value coming from for a lot of these things. Are there kind of sustainable value accrual versus something like DeFi, which I specialize in, where I see actual cash flows being generated and revenues being accrued to token holders. So I think
Mhm.
that's the fundamental divide that I see. And I'm really curious to get your thoughts on that. But I think before we get to that, I'd love to first map out the space with you because I don't even know if I have this space correctly identified. Because the way that I think about it is there's almost two spectrums, and I could be completely wrong on this. Now, one spectrum is that there is the recognizability of the IP. So you have folks like Dapper Labs or Flow Blockchain creating NBA Top Shot and partnering with all these global brands like UFC, Warner Music Group, and so on to create these collectibles that people understand and recognize. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have folks like Axie Infinity or Gods Unchained creating these kind of proprietary IP, right? Their own versions of Pokemon. And then the other spectrum that I see, the kind of vertical axis, is the complexity of the experience. So there's like crypto art, like you mentioned, where I'm guessing people just kind of display that art or kind of just hold that art. And there are more kind of complex levels of interactivity where you have things like crypto kitties or kind of digital pets that you can battle or breed and you can actually interact with it. So that's kind of how I'm understanding this space. But I'm curious about your mental model. Is that roughly how you contextualize all these different projects as well?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it too much, but I think I like your frame of kind of existing IP, things like NBA Top Shots, kind of new IP, things like Axie Infinity. And I think the other big category that I'm most excited about that you didn't really mention would be kind of you could call it UGC, right? User generated content. And I think to me the most exciting thing here is the ability for any creator on the internet to mint an NFT and sell it directly to their audience or fans, right? And it's it's a new business model that in a time where a lot of people, particularly like artists that rely on the physical world in some way, have needed a new business model. So yeah, I think the traditional IP stuff and the new IP stuff is also interesting. But to me, this kind of idea of UGC that's sold directly to a creator's audience, that's going to be the category that I think really propels this thing to new heights, and it's already happening, right? I mean, we've seen Beeple, and I think he's the best example of this. Someone that's an original creator of digital content, built up a huge following on Instagram, but wasn't able to monetize it all that well directly from his fans. And he did a drop, selling digital collectibles, and he, the first weekend made 3.5 million or something like that. So I think that is the category that is most interesting and exciting.
That's super interesting because that's where I'm the most skeptical, to be honest, because I see these kind of user generated content and I see people creating NFT versions of kind of basic JPEG or PNG images, and these things are sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm just not sure why they are valued as such. And I think that the kind of common counterpoint that I get is the value of an art piece doesn't necessarily depend on the effort that goes into creating the art piece. You look at seemingly effortless creations like a Jackson Pollock painting, which is just a lot of kind of paint splatters, but it's ascribed a very high value by the market. And then my counterpoint to that counterpoint usually is that, well, most people who are creating these user generated NFT art pieces aren't kind of world renowned artists yet. So I don't know if it justifies that type of valuations when people are paying, $100,000 for a basic image. So I'm very curious to get your thoughts there. Do you think that, where do you think this demand is coming from? Why are so many of these digital collectibles so valuable? Or is that just a small subset of valuable collectibles, and there's actually a much longer tail of that I'm not seeing?
Look, I think one thing that we've learned in 2021, even in the traditional finance world, is that value is just based on people's belief, right? And there's been gatekeepers, kind of the establishment that has created this model for how people should think about valuing things, right? And I think the internet is kind of changing that. And I think everything is just the value is based on people's belief. And that's why, I talk all the time about meme markets. And I think every crypto asset, sure, in DeFi, there's cash flows underlying, some of them. Although the reality right now is that it's a governance token, and there's an assumption that there will be cash flows in the future, but it's not presently, right? But it's really the value is based on people's belief that the thing is valuable, and of course that's not all good, right? There's a lot of memes are fleeting, but I think the job of an investor in crypto is to kind of recognize what are the memes that will last and grow over time versus the memes that'll be fleeting. And that's kind of how I think about digital collectibles too, particularly this kind of UGC segment that I'm talking about, right? It's like, sure, every creator that does this is likely not going to create collectibles that are really valuable over time, but some of them, the really good ones that have strong memes, may grow very valuable, right? Just like Bitcoin has. So I think, yeah, I feel strongly that like value is just based on belief, and it's dangerous because there's a lot of memes that come and go, just like we saw in 2017 with the ICO boom. Like a lot of those coins, didn't work out. But I think if you can identify the memes that persist over time and grow, that's really what you want to be doing when investing in this space.
Yeah, I think that might actually be part of why myself and some of my kind of DeFi native friends are find it hard to wrap their heads around where the value for a lot of the digital collectibles. So not talking about the marketplaces selling the collectibles, which would be earning a fees based on the exchange of those collectibles, but the value of the collectibles themselves. Because for things like Uniswap, I think last month alone they made $100 million in fees, and for Sushi Swap it was like to the tune of 40 million, and part of that is actually going to token holders. So there's a measurable dividend that stakers get. Whereas when I look at kind of digital collectibles, I don't really have a framework to identify, okay, which one of these collectibles will be valuable in the future. Whereas
But
for kind of
are you
DeFi,
sure
I
that
look at revenue.
Uniswap is giving fees to token holders? They're giving the LPs make fees, but my understanding is that there's an assumption in the future that token holders will vote in a fee, but I don't think fees are going to token holders yet.
Yeah, for Uniswap, it's not yet, but for things like SushiSwap, the fees are being accrued to token holders. But for Uniswap, yeah, I think it's the expectation that that fee switch will go on. I think sometime this year, but at least there's quantifiable kind of revenues that we can track. Whereas for collectibles, I'm not sure how to think about, where how do I predict or how do I even gauge which collectible is doing better than the other? Is that just kind of looking at the price at the time, or how do you think about that?
Well, again, I think it's identifying memes that grow. If people's belief in this thing, increases, then the value increases. So I think there's not a scientific, or way to do it, or a specific model that you can necessarily place on it. I think that's this idea of value being based on a DCF model is the traditional way to think about value. And I think we're in kind of a new world where value is based on people's belief on the internet, and that's how I think about these things, right? So if you identify an artist that you think is really talented, and you think that no one really knows about him yet, but he's going to grow much more popular in the future, then that might be a good artist to buy their artwork, right? As an example, like I think I just don't think that anything in crypto you could you could try to say that DeFi assets, for example, have cash flows, but they're not being valued that way right now. It's all memes, right? Uniswap has a really good meme. There's also a really good product that has significant fees, sure, but that's not what it's being valued based on right now. So I think that every crypto asset right now is just a meme, and some memes are better than others. Now, certainly, like thinking about fundamentals are important, and and thinking about which memes are going to be fleeting versus which memes are going to stay, and having if you have fundamentals and cash flows and a good meme, that's a good place to be. But I don't think that you need cash flows or to fit in a DCF to create massive value, right? I mean, Bitcoin has proven that, right? As a store of value, it's just people based on people's belief in it as a store of value, and I think I think NFTs are similar.
Yeah, I think part of the conflict might be because DeFi tokens and NFT tokens are both part of crypto. I kind of apply the same mental framework to evaluating both. But it seems like from what you're saying, DeFi tokens with all their cash flows and DCFs actually. If you invest in DeFi tokens, it resembles more kind of like equity research, whereas if you're investing in digital collectibles, it's actually a fundamentally different skill set. It's the identification of good artists, good memes. It's almost like investing in individual pieces of art or kind of investing in, I guess, gaming studios or picking kind of which games or which movies, kind of picking what type of IP you think would take off in the long term versus kind of valuing cash flows. Would you say that that's a fair kind of characterization?
Well, I think I disagree. As I've said, I disagree with the premise that DeFi right now what's giving DeFi coins value is cash flows, right? There's If you look at crypto fees uh, .info, I think is the site. There's a few protocols that are generating significant fees and have significant usage, and that is part of what's giving those projects value. But I think what's giving them more value right now is the memes associated with it, right? Like if you value if you put together a model of like what's the multiple on cash flow, for example, for any of these, it's insane. So I disagree with the premise that DeFi right now is uh, strictly being valued based on cash flows.
Mm. I guess my reply to that would be there is at least a path to adhering to some sort of fundamentals in the long term for DeFi, where there are cash flows which may not be factored in the valuations today, but there is a path there. And if our assumption is that the market's mature and that valuation methodologies mature, people should look more at fundamentals and fees being accrued. Whereas the path forward for kind of valuing NFTs for an investor, how would you kind of think about that? Like, how in the long term is it still all about memes, or would there be other things that factor into these valuations that sustain these valuations?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, people have been trying to put models together on cryptocurrencies too, right? So I think this conversation about NFTs is very similar to the conversation about store of value assets, right? Like Bitcoin and Ethereum as well. And I mean, I I don't have a good model, to be honest, and I've been investing in this space for a while. To me, when people come up with these models, it feels like they're trying to be smart and create, something that people can rally around. But I don't think there's any real good models for these assets yet. And it's store of value, it's belief. And so for Bitcoin, it's you know there's a 9 or 10 trillion dollar market cap for gold, and you know Bitcoin, as the belief in Bitcoin grows, Bitcoin can cut into that, right? And I think today it touched 1 trillion, so it's 1/8 of the or tenth of the way there, or something like that. Um, I think I don't have a good real framework for how to value these, other than you're betting on memes that you think are going to grow, and you think cryptocurrency is going to grow.
Yeah, I guess my challenge there is that for something like Bitcoin, right? It's fungible. There's only one meme that people are rallying behind. Whereas for collectibles, there's so many different collectibles, that there's separate memes for each artist, for each pieces of art. I don't know if you see it that way as well. But perhaps the parallel there is that there are also a lot of Bitcoin competitors, and Bitcoin still manages to kind of maintain that superiority. But I'm curious about how you think about how do you create a singular meme to rally people behind NFTs, given that they're by definition non fungible and there's so many different pieces of them.
Look, all a meme is a story that spreads across the internet, right, and around the world. And uh, there's, of course, lots of different ways to create compelling stories that people rally around. I think, and I think one of the reasons why NFTs are catching on at a mainstream level right now is because, as I said at the beginning, I think like to date, crypto has been for kind of elites. I would say like more analytical, smarter people. And NFTs is like fun, and the stories are fun in a way that's more relatable to normal people. So, a meme that's compelling, can be, this crazy artist that's been doing every days for the past 5 years, and has been grinding it out, creating really cool digital artwork around pop culture. And he's now selling digital collectibles that people like. And it's, I think, the story around like the artist in particular, and this gets back to my belief in kind of UGC content. I think the meme is kind of the artist and the story behind the artist. And I think that's the really talented artists that create good work, that have good stories. I think those are the memes that are likely to spread. So um, yeah, as you can tell, I mean, look, we're very bullish on crypto art, and we've invested in the category. We led the seed round in super rare, and we've also acquired some NFTs for the fund. So yeah, we think that crypto art in particular is an exciting category that's just going to grow because it's got the digital scarcity of Bitcoin with a story that's more relatable to more people, and different stories that are more relatable to more people.
Now, before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to share some exciting companies that made this podcast possible. So recently, Tesla announced they may accept Bitcoin as payment. But what if I told you that you could win a Tesla just by trading Bitcoin? Well, you can with our sponsor, Crypto.com's mobile app. To enter a lucky draw for 4 Teslas, download the Crypto.com app and buy at least $100 worth of Bitcoin before March the 8th. Now, if you're new to Crypto.com, you also enjoy 0% credit and debit card fees in your first month as well. You can also increase your chances of winning by applying for the Crypto.com Visa card, which gives you up to 8% back along with rebates for your Spotify, Netflix, and Amazon Prime subscriptions. And I personally have one and I absolutely love the product. So head on over to the show notes to learn more. I'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Bittrex Global. As someone based outside of the US, I've always been frustrated about how hard it is to invest in companies like Tesla, Google, Apple, and Netflix. Brokerage accounts have exorbitant fees and have terrible trading experiences. Fortunately, Bittrex Global is now offering tokenized stocks, which means you can invest in US stocks 24 hours a day, not just during stock market hours. You can even buy fractions of a share and manage your crypto and stock portfolio on one single exchange. I'm really excited about this as a user, and if you are too, sign up today for Bittrex Global using the link in the description. And are you more bullish on the marketplaces like Super Rare or Rarible, or are you more bullish on the individual pieces of art? I actually don't even know if that's a correct way to kind of characterize that question, but I guess.
No, I think it's a
Um,
good question. Yeah, no, we've been thinking about this because it's like looking at cryptocurrency in 2013, right? I had a debate on Twitter with Chamath actually about this in 2013. When I was at Coinbase, he was I think he posed the question: will company, or maybe I posed the question: will companies or cryptocurrencies perform better? And I think his argument was that Bitcoin would greatly outperform any company in the space. And
mm,
um, if you look back on it, he was mostly right. Um, I think Bitcoin outperformed every company in the space except Coinbase, right? And we'll see. I mean, the based on like the from Coinbase Series A to where it's being valued in secondary markets now. So yeah, I think a good question now is like, will the marketplaces like OpenSea and SuperRare um, outperform the artwork? It's a little different because at that time it was just Bitcoin, and it was kind of Bitcoin or uh, marketplace. And with NFTs, there's not. I guess you could say the one blue chip right now is CryptoPunks, but unclear if that will be a meme that sustains over time. But it's a little trickier because there's so many more choices. But I think a fair question is: will a basket of blue chip NFTs outperform the marketplaces? And I don't know. I mean, I think I don't have a strong opinion. We certainly are really excited about OpenSea and SuperRare as kind of the leading marketplaces. OpenSea for as a secondary marketplace, SuperRare as a primary marketplace for specifically artists. But yeah, no, we're buying a basket of kind of blue chip NFTs as well because we think there's venture like kind of upside there, um, and we believe in the category, so we think it's good exposure to have.
Got it. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on my intuition there because the way I think about it is that these NFTs they don't trade hands as frequently as fungible tokens. So it's not like Bitcoin or Litecoin or any of those large cryptocurrencies on Coinbase that swaps hands maybe 1,000 times a day. These NFTs, I'm guessing, at most maybe trade a dozen times a day for an art piece, for instance. So for an exchange or marketplace to really have that explosive growth that Coinbase had, we'll need a very, very long tail of NFT assets. It will be a game about how many assets there are because each asset doesn't change hands as much and doesn't generate fees as much as tokens on an exchange. So to me, the intuition today is that it seems like a basket of NFTs would probably accrue value more than an exchange, given that the exchange activity probably cannot rival that of a kind of fungible token exchange. But that's coming from a place of ignorance. I don't know too much about these marketplaces. I'm curious to get your take there.
Well, you should look at the Dune boards that Richard has created. Have you seen? Do you look at Richard's Dune boards?
Yes, I have seen that. And for our listeners, Richard is your partner at One Confirmation, and he put together this dashboard for tracking NFT marketplaces, right?
Well, yeah, Richard. I mean, he's a Dune pro. I think he's the most prolific user of Dune and has created a bunch of awesome boards. But yeah, in particular, I mean, if you look at if you go to Dune and search OpenSea, you could see their monthly uh, marketplace growth, and it's certainly true that NFT markets are way less liquid than cryptocurrency, exchanges right now, right? But I think liquidity is coming, and I mean, if you look at OpenSea's month over month growth, um, I think they did about 8 million in GMV, gross marketplace value, in January, and they're on pace to do something like 50 million in GMV uh, in February. So there's tremendous growth. OpenSea is going to do over $1 million in revenue uh, in February. So, and the cool thing about on-chain products and crypto, right, is this is all public. So you could go and see this for yourself. But yeah, I think more liquidity is coming to NFTs, and it's still a problem that that needs to be solved in some ways. And I think there's things like fractionalizing one of one NFTs um, and creating ERC tokens that are ERC20 tokens that are representations of NFTs and things like that. Could bring more liquidity to these markets. But I think there's more liquidity than you might think, and it's growing fast. So I think I think these marketplaces could be very big.
And I'm curious about these marketplaces from an investor's perspective. Do you see their path to establishing a moat to be similar to that of other centralized exchanges, especially given your experience at Coinbase? Or is it actually easier to establish a moat for marketplaces given that the tokens are non fungible?
Yeah, no, that's a good question that I've been thinking about. I think Coinbase and centralized exchanges, Coinbase in particular, has a really strong regulatory moat, right? And I think a, a big reason for Coinbase's success is because we invested in um, compliance and building relationships with banks and regulators early, and making sure that we had registered with FinCEN as an MSB, and got MTLs at the state level, and had a compliance program. So there's a regulatory moat there that comes with being a centralized exchange connected to the banking system that isn't in kind of on-chain marketplaces, right? So, I mean, and particularly, I think for a startup to have all that, it would cost something like 5 million now. So it's a good place to be if you're an incumbent when there's a big, regulatory moat. But it's not a good place for startups and innovation, and that's kind of where centralized exchanges are. And obviously, I think a lot of people listening recognize that a big part of the explosion in DeFi is non-custodial wallets and entrepreneurs being able to create financial products without having to invest in heavily in kind of the compliance and the regulation early. So yeah, I think there are the moat is there's still network effects. So there's liquidity begets liquidity, and if you can be an early brand that's a great product that attracts liquidity, I think it's similar to centralized exchanges in that you kind of have to really fuck it up to lose. Um, and so I think NFT marketplaces will be similar in that sense, but there's less of a barrier for startups to get in the space. So it certainly could be more competitive.
Well, Nick, now we've talked about the collectibles themselves, we've talked about the marketplaces. Now I'm really interested to get your personal experience in NFTs. So can you maybe walk us through a story of maybe an NFT or collectible that you've invested in that did really well, and what was the reason behind its performance, and what were some of the things that you were watching for when you invested?
Well, we think in long term perspective. So I'm I wouldn't say I mean NFT prices are all way up right now, but I wouldn't say that I wouldn't describe them as like being massive successes, any of them yet, right? Because when we invest, we're looking for venture returns, on the order of 25x plus, right? So, one one investment, it was the first NFT that we bought for the fund, and we announced this, but we bought the Genesis Mint on Super Rare. So Super Rare, for those that don't know, kind of mentioned earlier, it's a marketplace that artists can mint works and sell them directly to their fans or collectors. And the team is fantastic. They've been kind of grinding in this crypto art category for quite a while before it was cool. And the first artist that sold anything on Super Rare is a guy named Robbie Barat. His Super Rare handle is Videodrome, and he is an artist that was really one of the early pioneers in AI based art, specifically GAN algorithm is kind of how he created this artwork on Super Rare, and it's called the AI generated nude number one. So that's a artwork that we own for the fund. We bought it for 100 ETH in January, and we think the artist is fantastic. We think the work is fantastic and has kind of historical significance because it was the first mint on Super Rare, and because it was this work led by an AI based artist that was kind of innovating and creating something really new and unique. So yeah, that's a work that we're really excited about, that we think has venture like returns, and it's a very small investment for the fund, but um, it's, I think, a good work to have on a marketplace that we're large investors in and really believe in. So
God, and are a lot of the art that expensive, like 100 ETH, or is there like a wide range of prices on Super Rare?
there's a wide range. I mean, as you know, and listeners know, gas fees are really high right now, and so I think, and super rare, and really all of Ethereum right now is kind of priced out really small transactions. Um,
Mm,
so it's not like works are selling for tens of dollars but hundreds. I think probably you can check. Richard built the super rare bot, and it's a really good resource for people that want to see what's happening with sales. It tweets every sale that happens on the platform, and so if you look right now, you probably see the prices range from hundred or a couple $100 at minimum up to hundreds of thousands.
right, that's really interesting. And I'm also curious. So on that point about gas fees, do you see the potential for projects that are focusing on NFTs that offer cheaper fees, layer one projects like Flow having potential then, given that it seems like gas fees is a bottleneck, well, not just for NFTs, but actually for general transactions in Ethereum?
I think there's some potential. Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously a narrative that's been oversold by projects, to hype themselves up and to generate interest in coins and things like that. But I think there are a few truly interesting projects that are for real that could bring scalability, cheaper transactions, faster transactions, better UX to DeFi and to NFTs and things like that. But I also think there's a lot of great things happening on Ethereum that could bring it to Ethereum. So I don't have a strong view one way or the other there. I think there's definitely, it could go in a few different directions. I think, what I do feel strongly on is that Ethereum is working for kind of high dollar value, low throughput type transactions today, and I don't think that's going to change. I think it's just going to continue to thrive for that. What's unclear is whether Ethereum is going to be able, or Ethereum side chains, things like that, layer two, are going to be able to provide higher throughput, lower value transactions to Ethereum, or most of that activity will happen on other chains. I think if you look right now, and cryptoslam.io is a good resource for people that want to see NFT volumes. One of the interesting data points is that if you look at Top Shots has like thousands of transactions and thousands of users per day, and CryptoPunks is kind of, they tend to be one or two right now for like the most activity, and CryptoPunks has similar dollar value transaction numbers, but way lower users, right? So I think there's something to like about the Top Shots approach of being more centralized, being more scalable. But there's also some negatives to that approach that I really don't like. Right, like it's really a closed platform right now where you can't trade the assets on other marketplaces. You don't really truly own the assets in that sense. And I think they hope to progressively decentralize to a point where it does look more like an asset on Ethereum, where you own it on your own wallet and you can trade it on another marketplace like OpenSea and things like that. But yeah, I think it's still early there, and I don't feel strongly that Ethereum or any particular platform really is going to be the winner for sure on kind of lower dollar value, higher throughput stuff.
Yeah, and one comment I made about Top Shot is that what I thought was interesting was that a lot of the transactions was generated not with kind of on-chain purchases, but with kind of Visa purchases. So people who used their credit card to buy these NFTs, and that drew in a lot of people who are not into crypto yet. So that type of stuff I think will bring in quite a lot of users, especially with these kind of recognizable IPs. I personally don't own any NBA Top Shot, but I'm waiting for them if they launch maybe like a UFC type of NFT. I think that would be super interesting.
You like
And I think on
UFC?
that, yeah, big
Nice.
UFC fan. I think a lot of people will be surprised to hear this, but yeah, I am waiting for waiting for NFTs to drop there.
Who's your
And
favorite
speaking,
fighter?
sorry,
Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
I'm pretty mainstream, so I'm a huge Conor McGregor fan.
Okay. So you'd buy his moment.
I would probably buy his moment if that does come out. That would convince me to get into NFTs.
Nice.
And I think speaking of that, that one follow up question that I have to kind of wrap us up is, as someone who is relatively, green to NFTs, I've bought a CryptoKitty before. I've checked out some of these platforms from an investment perspective. But if I really want to get into using these platforms and kind of trying them out, what are some of the newer stuff that I should do today?
Well, Richard built cryptoart.io, right, which is a good resource. So you can dive in. And I think, particularly for someone it seems more analytical like yourself, Jason, if you want to see the data behind who are the top artists, what are the top artworks, and what's the data behind what's going on here, cryptoart.io is a good resource. So for crypto art in particular, I would kind of start there, and then I would say, check out OpenSea. OpenSea has a rankings page where you can see a bunch of data as well, and see. OpenSea is a secondary marketplace for all NFTs, right? So not just crypto art, but gaming assets and so on and so forth. So you could see what people are interested in, what people are trading, and see if anything is interesting to you, right? I think part of what makes NFTs fun is, I think there's something for everyone. It's all about your interest, right? So you said, Jason, that you like UFC, and that would maybe get you interested, and that makes sense to me, because maybe you're not really interested in artwork or design, or you're not interested in games like Axie, or you're not interested in NBA. So there's maybe nothing for you yet that really excites you to collect. But I think we're just going to see an explosion of kind of new types of NFTs, and ultimately, if you have any type of interest like outside of crypto, I think there will likely be a way for you to collect something related to it, right? And it's fun because, one, you it gives you a connection to something that you like. But I think for me and for a lot of people, I don't know if you're the same. It's like you also like to spot like trends in your interest early, and kind of make a bet on them, right? So if you like Conor McGregor. I mean, Conor McGregor is pretty mainstream, so maybe not. He would be a good blue chip bet potentially as a moment, right? But maybe there's a up and coming UFC fighter that is 21 years old, and no one really knows about yet, but you think is a beast, and is going to to go on to be famous and massively successful, and you could buy his moment too, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff going on like that. And particularly for me, I've always just loved being able to identify like cultural phenomenon early, and bet on it. And NFTs kind of allow you to do that for whatever you're interested in, which is fun to me.
Yeah, that's where I think it's so fascinating because there's so many different aspects of different kind of practices and industries that you bring in. There's, I think, art investing, as we talked about earlier on, and it sounds like now there's elements of almost fantasy sports as well, fantasy football, fantasy basketball, and so on. So it's definitely a very multidisciplinary field, and I can't wait to dive into some of the things that you mentioned, which I'll include in the show notes. And for people who want to follow what you're personally looking into in the NFT space or beyond the NFT space, what are the best channels for them to follow you, Nick?
I would just follow One Confirmation, our Twitter. It's just at One Confirmation. We've got a newsletter as well. You can go to oneconfirmation.com and subscribe. And yeah, we're probably going to be putting out more kind of content about what we're doing in the space. We've been buying some NFTs, and in the future we'll likely share what we've bought so far and why. And yeah, I would also check out Super Rare, check out OpenSea, and check out the founders of those projects as well, Devin and Alex of OpenSea, and John Crane and Jonathan Perkins of Super Rare, and you can find them all on Twitter. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm interested in NFTs, and it's become a personal interest, and we have good exposure to the fund, but the people that are deepest in it, I think, are kind of the best to follow in this area.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and educate me and educate us. This is really appreciated. Thanks again.
Are you still an NFT skeptic?
I think I'm gonna try out some of the things that you mentioned, and I think I'm starting to see the fun in that. But come back in maybe a week or two, and then we'll catch up on that again.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jason.
All right, thanks, Nick.